So in our case specifically, we use all of open source to run all of the infrastructure that we're using. That's mostly Kubernetes, Docker, our own platform called Lagoon, which is completely open source. And I think it really drives a lot of the moving into cloud because people sometimes can see that using open source is going to be much cheaper. Like if you go to a cloud provider running into Linux or Windows, it's actually a different price. So people are maybe more inclined to use open source. But I think one of the things we have to acknowledge is that a lot of the times the actual infrastructure itself is not open source. And maybe bits and pieces of it are, but you don't really know what AWS or Google or Azure are running. So I think one of the things is also that if you as a company want to support open source, you maybe want to also use an infrastructure that is in open source itself. OpenStack comes to mind, which is a completely infrastructure system that is completely open source. And this not only gives you a good mindset, but it also helps in terms of security. You can exactly know what is running there. You can see the source code. Now, of course, we maybe trust all the big ones that they do the right thing, but there is not a real way to really, really know that they do good security, good separation, and all these things. While in an open source, you can. And that's one of the reasons that we are using open source for everything, that we are open sourcing all our own stuff. And we also try to use them as much as open source down to the stack that we can go. I think it has mostly to do that a lot of the cloud allows you to do really modern systems that have never been thought before. Like, um, it used to be that if you needed a new server, you had to buy it first. You physically arrived it, you unpacked it, you walked into your data center, you physically put the server in, and you started it. So people didn't think as adding a new server as something that maybe the website could automatically tell the infrastructure, I need another server, please start one, because this was not a process that was possible. Today, with a completely API-driven system, you can add one server, 10 servers, 100 servers, 1,000 servers within minutes. And so you can think about your infrastructure in a very different way. What we, for example, do is we scale down the infrastructure if we don't need it. So during the day, you maybe have 5 or 6 servers running. During the night, you maybe only have one server running or maybe two. And so that's a completely different way to think about. And you need a system that can manage this, that can do this. And what we see a lot of times, these modern tools, they only exist in open source because open source has a much bigger community and much more people that implement these new tools, while maybe proprietary software, they're really lacking behind supporting these modern systems because nobody's really pushing them. Because they sold their licenses already. Why do we need to support these new tools? And while the open source, they constantly update and implement. So that's what we see a lot, is that these really, really modern ways to run, you only find it in open source. You will maybe find it years later in proprietary as well. But if you want to use it now, a lot of times the only way is to use open source.